A battered pickup truck sputtered once. It stopped right outside Silverthorne Academy's grand gates, a humble machine parked in a world of unearned privilege. Around them, shiny luxury cars reflected the intense wealth of the school. Expensive lights hung from the heavy stone arches. Sleek black sedans and expensive silver coupes. Even a massive SUV with a uniformed driver. The academy loomed over everyone, glowing in gold to flaunt its immense status. Stained glass and high towers sparkled in the night like an untouchable fortress. A palace built for wealthy people who forgot what real struggle feels like. Daniel Rowan turned off the ignition, bracing himself for the unfair fight ahead. Beside him, his daughter smoothed her pale blue dress, then grabbed her cardboard case. Let's see how they treat this innocent child. Just 7 years old with soft curls and worried eyes. Tonight, this sweet girl was trying her absolute best to be strong for her hard-working father. "Does it look okay?" she whispered softly. Daniel looked at her simple outfit. He had ironed it 3 times, determined to protect her from the judgmental eyes of high society. He even stitched her little waist ribbon back on by hand late last night. Her white shoes were old and scuffed, but he had polished them until they gleamed. "You look perfect," he promised. She nodded, but her small fingers gripped the worn edges of her cardboard case. Inside was the brilliant invention she had built for the school's big competition. A tiny emergency power device she proudly named the Little Beacon. It featured fold-out solar panels and a hand crank. She had designed a safe saltwater battery with her dad at their workbench. But the brilliant concept was completely hers. Cheap, durable, brilliant. It could easily charge a phone or run lights for hours. Or power a medical monitor during emergencies, a design that rightfully won first place 3 days ago. Until the adults interfered. Tonight the school hosted its flashy annual charity gala in the Grand Hall, where wealthy donors drank expensive champagne and bragged about their fake commitment to excellence. They were ready to hand out the prestigious Innovator Medal in front of the city's richest families. But between Sophie's honest victory and this elite public ceremony, greedy administrators decided to steal her award and hand it to a wealthy donor's kid. Daniel opened his door, letting the chilly night air rush inside. Before they even took 3 steps toward the entrance, a smug guard blocked their path with a cold, fake smile that only wealthy people buy. "The service entrance is in the back," the guard barked. He sneered at Daniel's faded jacket, their rusty truck, and the cheap cardboard box. Deliveries and workers must use the south gate. Sophie froze in fear, but her father gently placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "We are not here to deliver anything," he said. The guard's face hardened. "This gala is strictly invitation only." Daniel quietly pulled out their official invitation, sparkling with elegant silver foil lettering. Let's look closely as the guard snatches the invitation, staring down at Daniel as if a working man's name didn't belong there. But the gold invitation was real. It held the school's official seal. Daniel Rowan and little Sophie Rowan. The guard cleared his throat. "Of course." "My mistake," Sophie lowered her eyes. Daniel reclaimed his card without a word. As they walked past, the guard muttered into his radio, warning the others that they had arrived. They weren't being welcomed, they were being targeted. A wealthy woman in a gold gown paused, judging the child and her father. Her 8-year-old son stood beside her, wrapped in a school blazer that screamed of inherited privilege. The young boy saw Sophie's case and smirked. "Mom," he whispered loudly, "is that the battery girl?" The mother laughed, amused by her son's cruelty. Sophie's hand found Daniel's. He squeezed it tight. "Keep your eyes up, bug." She nodded bravely, though her tiny hands were cold with fear. Inside, the hall dripped with cold marble, flickering candles, and hushed, wealthy voices. A violin quartet played from the high balcony. Privileged students in crisp uniforms mingled below. Towering floral displays lined the grand entrance. Teachers gathered in small groups wearing fake, polished smiles. Arrogant parents paraded in evening wear, expecting everyone to bow to their wealth and power. To us, Daniel looked like an honest working man surrounded by arrogant snobs. He wore his clean work boots and dark jeans with absolute pride. A simple button-down shirt and the worn brown jacket he had owned for decades. The jacket fit his broad frame, but its honest wear could not be hidden. His rough hands belonged to a man who actually built and fixed things. He did. That old truck outside belonged to him. So did the modest farmhouse outside of town. The quiet life he built after his wife died was chosen, not forced by poverty. These snobs could not comprehend choosing simplicity when you have wealth. They only recognized simplicity when it was forced by poverty. A young woman with a staff badge stepped forward, holding a clipboard to her chest. She looked exhausted, the way you and I know honest people look in corrupt systems. "Mr. Rowan," she asked as he turned. "I'm Nora Ellis." She was science faculty. Her gaze softened as she looked at Sophie. "Congratulations, Sophie. Your incredible invention won over every technical judge." Sophie blinked. "Thank you," Nora lowered her voice. "Your project is in the East Hall, but expect some trouble from the administration tonight." Daniel studied her concerned face. She wanted to warn him, but not in this room. Before he could speak, a tall, slick man in a designer tuxedo blocked their path. With perfect silver hair and a fake smile, he purred, "Mr. Rowan." He offered a hand. "Headmaster Theodore Bram, welcome to Silverthorne." Daniel shook his hand briefly before Bram's dismissive gaze dropped to little Sophie. "And our young inventor. We're pleased you could join us." The words sounded polite, but his tone said something else entirely. "You should be grateful to even be here." Sophie clutched her case tighter. Bram continued, "The gala can overwhelm new families. I trust you will understand that tonight is as much about community culture as academics." Daniel stayed silent. The headmaster's fake smile thinned a fraction. "If you need help finding your table, someone can guide you. Our event includes donor thank yous, student awards, and a scholarship update. A very special evening." "Scholarship update?" Sophie whispered, instantly regretting it. Bram glared down, clearly annoyed that a child dared to speak. "Just a standard review. These things happen." He dismissed them with a nod and turned to welcome a wealthier couple behind them. Sophie looked up at her father. "What does that mean?" He knelt down so they were at eye level. "It means petty adults in power are playing games with your future." With her prize at stake, he could have lied. But he never lied to his daughter. "Maybe," he said quietly. Her lip trembled. "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" His voice came steady, protective, and low. "No. And before tonight ends, they will know it too." She searched his face, then nodded, trusting him just as she always had. Her father stood up and gently took the heavy case. "Now show me where your project is." The grand exhibition hall was a sea of expensive banners and sterile white display pedestals under blinding spotlights. The student projects were arranged in a wide curve. Robotics, water filtration systems, and climate sensors. Look at these polished presentations built with rich family money and professional help. But Sophie's table was shoved near the dark end, her project pushed out of the light. The printed first-place card that had sat on her table on Judging Day was gone. In its place was a tiny card reading under review. Sophie stopped walking. Daniel gently placed the carrying case on the table and unlatched it. Her handmade emergency beacon sat nestled safely inside the protective foam. The fold-out panels showed small patches where she had worked to improve the hinge design after her original version cracked. Neat, handwritten labels proudly explained how the battery cell worked. She detailed the crank power, low-voltage outputs, and the emergency flashlight mode. At the very top of her display board, right under the title, was a special message she insisted on adding for little kids who get scared when the lights go out. Her father remembered the exact stormy night she had first designed it. Rain lashing the windows, their power had cut out for 3 hours. Sophie had huddled inside a blanket fort with a flashlight, trying to make jokes about monsters while keeping her courage up. Every few minutes she checked to ensure her phone was not dying. Claire once nursed sick children at night before the illness took her. She always said darkness frightens children far more than pain ever could. Remembering that, Sophie built something powerful to fight that fear. Something truly useful, something real. Right next to her sat the flashy display of Mason Wexler, the privileged boy. His project was just a sleek drone delivery concept mounted on stands. Acrylic stands with expensive, glossy branding. Stunning but completely useless. The judges originally wrote that it failed 2 critical tests and was pure theory. Yet, adult power bought him the center spotlight, and a silver ribbon appeared beside it. Nora Ellis appeared once more. She paused just long enough to leave a folded program on Sophie's table. "There is a revised ceremony order in there," she whispered quietly. "Do not open it here." Daniel met her eyes. "Thank you." She swallowed hard, gave a tiny nod, and slipped away before anyone noticed. Sophie stared at that fraudulent drone display, then at her empty table. They changed it, it was no question. Daniel placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Looks that way." But the judges said mine worked, he knew it did. Then why? Daniel looked across the room, seeking the source of corruption. Mason's mother stood talking with Headmaster Bram and another man. A heavy man wearing a red silk tie and a powerful board pin. Dressed in elegant green satin, she carried herself like a queen addressing mere servants. Bram bowed to her influence. The board member laughed obsequiously at whatever she said next. Because that woman expects the world to kneel before her money. Because a spineless headmaster is terrified of losing funding. Because this school, built on promises of opportunity, now auctions it away. But he kept that bitter truth hidden. Sometimes, he told her, corrupt people try to rewrite the rules when they lose. Sophie looked at her machine. "That is cheating." "Yes." She frowned. "Then why do the adults allow it?" That innocent question cut deeper than any other. Because children expose the ugly truths that corrupt adults spend lifetimes avoiding. Daniel gently brushed her hair back. "They absolutely should not be." An arrogant voice echoed from across the crowded exhibition hall. "There she is," Mason Wexler sneered, strutting over to them. He had the smug confidence of a spoiled, unchecked child. His mother followed behind, smiling as if his arrogance were a virtue. The boy pointed mockingly at her beacon. "My mom says the judges only pitied you because your project looks homemade." Sophie tensed. "It is homemade," she whispered quietly. "I actually made it." The boy rolled his eyes. "Exactly." The boy's wealthy mother finally stepped in. She called to Mason but had no real desire to stop his cruelty. She turned her icy fake smile on Daniel, introducing herself as Helena Wexler. She patronizingly dismissed Sophie's hard work as nothing but a sweet little project. Daniel offered a firm, quiet nod. "Daniel Rowan." Her eyes immediately judged his simple jacket and worn boots. She scanned the tape display board and the cheap stitching on Sophie's ribbon. "We see right through her." She judged them instantly, placing them where she thought they belonged. "This academy loves to play at being generous," she said. "It builds great publicity." Sophie was completely confused. Daniel saw right through her. Helena leaned down toward the child. "That is a pretty dress, darling. Did the financial aid office help you find that?" Sophie blushed deeply, defending her father. "My dad fixed it." "How resourceful," Helena sneered. But Daniel kept his voice perfectly calm. "You seem highly focused on what my daughter is wearing." Helena's sharp smile hardened. "Only because how you look matters here. This school prepares children for the real world." "No," Daniel countered, "just a very narrow kind of world." For a brief second, her wealthy, arrogant mask slipped. A chime cut her off, rescuing her as guests were summoned to the dining hall. Helena grabbed her son's shoulder. "Come along. Let us let the others enjoy their night too." Walking away, the wealthy boy looked back to cruelly whisper that she would never win. Sophie stared down, crushed. Her protective father waited patiently for her to meet his eyes. "What do we do when people try to make us feel small?" She wiped her nose and tried to stand taller. "We never shrink, that is my girl." The grand hall had been transformed into a monument to pure, excessive wealth. Massive crystal chandeliers blazed. Posh tables draped in ivory cloth crowded the floor, all facing a stage framed by the arrogant school crest. A classical string quartet gave way to a soft piano. Silent servants moved like shadows. A massive screen flashed pictures of privileged students and wealthy donors alongside fake words like integrity and leadership. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sophie were shoved into the darkest, furthest corner, hidden behind a large flower pillar right next to the noisy kitchen doors. Blast after blast of hot air and heavy grease hit them from the service corridor. To the wealthy board members sitting up front, this innocent child was completely invisible. Sophie looked around, hurt. Did they forget about us? Daniel pulled out her seat. No, she sat down, feeling the insult. Their table was reserved for two forgotten retired teachers, and a nervous parent who offered them an apologetic, knowing smile. A guest actually mistook Daniel for the help. You can see how these elites look down on honest working people. Then, another worker walked up with water and stopped right next to Daniel. "The drivers are being fed downstairs, sir." Sudden, heavy silence gripped the table. Daniel looked up calm. "I am not a driver." The waiter turned red. "I am sorry." "It happens," Daniel murmured, but he memorized the man's face. Not because of the waiter, but because these corrupt elites love their cruel hierarchies. And tonight he would remember every single abuser of that petty power. Up on stage, Headmaster Bram took the microphone to welcome the crowd to Silverthorne's annual Light for Learning Gala. The man preached smoothly about tradition, excellence, and helping others. Behind him, massive screens showed off the campus, the science hall, and student grants built on Claire's legacy. Daniel watched this farce in silence. But none of these hypocrites actually knew Claire's real heart. They did not know how she laughed into her shoulder, protecting baby Sophie's sleep, or how she sat cross-legged on their kitchen counter, mapping out outreach programs and networks to protect poor, forgotten children. They never heard her say during a storm many years ago, "Every single child deserves one light that will never go out." After she passed, Daniel mobilized the massive empire he spent 15 brutal years building in secret. Through strategic investments and a patience so deep it looked like disappearance, he vanished from the public eye almost overnight, shrouding his identity in trusts and legal fortresses to keep greedy gossips at bay. He did not care for high society rankings or shallow invitations. But Claire championed the overlooked kids, believing in their quiet brilliance. She stood up for children dismissed just for lacking wealthy polish. So he poured money into schools and labs, libraries and scholarships. In fact, the absolute largest fortune keeping Silverthorne afloat had come, year after year, from a donor so deeply hidden that the school board assumed some distant family office was funding them. Only a select few knew who held the real power to shut them down. Up at the head table, Victor Lang leaned back, acting as if this school were his personal kingdom. He ran the nonprofit trust that governed all student funds, managing every single scholarship for vulnerable kids. Pure prestige, neatly trimmed beard, flashing diamond cuff links as the fake face of charity. And if Daniel's evidence held, a monster stealing from children. Beside him sat Helena Wexler, radiating the smug arrogance of an elite who always rigs the game in her favor. Her son Mason sneered down at the room. While his face flashed on screen, a wealthy volunteer marched to the cheaper tables to demand charity pledges on silver trays. She placed one right in front of Daniel, flashing a fake smile of pure condescension. "Tonight's minimum family donation starts at 5,000. She spoke loudly, ensuring all the neighboring tables heard her. "If you cannot afford it, just leave the page blank." The retired faculty woman across from Daniel shifted, visibly uneasy. Sophie froze beside him. Daniel quietly picked up the pledge card. The volunteer watched as he folded the card, set it down, and said, "I will decide after the program." The woman sneered, her fake smile turning to open contempt. Of course, just a few minutes later, Helena Wexler paraded past their table, fresh from schmoozing with elites near the stage. She stopped, her eyes narrowing at the folded card. "Not everyone understands how these evenings work," she said with sweet malice. Daniel looked up. Then this must be a perfect chance to learn. Her gaze flickered. She laid a hand on Sophie's chair, lowering her voice to that soft, intimate tone bullies use to make absolute cruelty sound refined. "People like you," she spat, looking directly into the father's eyes, "should be grateful your daughter was even allowed through the door." Her cruel words hit like a physical blow, silencing the neighboring table. While bystanders ignored the little girl's choked gasp, Daniel set his glass down with lethal precision. For one tense moment, the elite bully expected him to snap and make a scene, to justify every prejudice they held against him, but he gave them nothing. Instead, he commanded quietly, "Take your hand off my daughter's chair." No shouting, no threat. Just a cold, powerful demand that forced her to step back before her pride could resist. Helena straightened, forcing a nervous laugh. "Touchy." She walked away. Sophie stared miserably at her lap. Daniel leaned close. "Look at me." Slowly, she did. "Her words only define her, Sophie. They say nothing about you." The child nodded, though painful tears filled her eyes anyway. She desperately blinked them back, too ashamed to weep in public. Her silent struggle hurt him more than any loud sob. Dinner dragged on in a sickening blur of speeches and subtle malice. Headmaster Brahm preached inclusion while practicing absolute exclusion. Victor Lang praised merit while secretly selling it. Corrupt donors applauded themselves. Privileged children were called to the stage, receiving rigged awards designed solely to honor whichever wealthy family had bought their way in. At one point, a pompous trustee stopped by, asking Daniel if he worked in facilities or grounds maintenance. Later, one of the bully's friends whispered loudly that Sophie's brilliant project looked like a lunchbox with wires. Every petty insult was minor enough to deny. Together they built a wall of hostility, but Daniel kept watching. During dessert, whistleblower Nora Ellis slipped behind him, forcing her way past her own fear. "Mr. Rowan," she whispered, "I am so sorry, but you must see this." She quietly pressed a small flash drive into his palm. Original scores, printed emails. "I copied what I could," she whispered, shaking. Headmaster Brahm ordered the panel to slash Sophie's scores after misses. Wexler promised a massive donation if her son Mason won tonight. We watched as Mr. Lang signed away her scholarship. They claimed it was just about institutional fit. Daniel gripped the evidence drive while Nora swallowed her fear. There is more. They have stolen scholarships before. They are rerouting those student funds. We did not know how high the corruption went. "Why give this to me?" he asked. She looked at innocent Sophie, staring at a dessert she could not even eat. "Because she earned it," Nora declared. "And if we do not stop them, they will keep teaching kids that money wins over truth." Daniel gave a firm nod. "Thank you." Nora stepped back. "I am sorry I stayed silent. You are speaking now." On stage, the announcer asked everyone to remain seated for the main award, the Founder's Young Innovator Medal and the Clare Grant Scholarship. Sophie froze. The room fell silent, hungry for the spectacle of public praise. Headmaster Braham walked to the microphone, clutching a folder. Behind him, the massive screens flashed photos from the science fair. Sophie's bright face appeared for a brief second. She smiled beside her invention, then her picture vanished far too fast. Braham folded his hands. "This year," he began, "our students showed incredible imagination and heart." The decision was close, he claimed. Sophie tensed up. Daniel quietly slid his chair back, ready to strike. Braham continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "However, the administration considered much more than just her technical performance. We evaluated character, conduct, and how they represent our institution." An uneasy whisper rippled through the room. We see Victor Lang bow his head, hiding a smug smile behind his drink. Braham opened the folder. "Now the school has decided to alter the original results." The crowd reacted instantly, some with curiosity, others with smug satisfaction. Sophie looked at Daniel, pale and confused. Braham smiled at his audience. "The Innovator Medal and the Clare Grant Scholarship go to Mason Wexler for his emergency response project." Loud applause erupted instantly from the wealthy front tables. Delighted and arrogant, Mason leaped up in absolute triumph. His mother clapped smoothly, as if money rewriting justice was perfectly normal. But in the back, young Sophie stood frozen. Her face went blank, the tragic look of a child experiencing a cruel injustice before tears can even fall. Then Braham announced, "Before we bring Mason up on stage, we want to recognize Sophie Rowan for her participation. Sophie, please step up here and bring your project marker so our staff can update the display later." A mere participation award. Forcing a child to tear down her own victory. This isn't education, it is abuse. The crowd turned in their seats, staring down a defenseless girl sitting in the back corner. On the screen, they shoved her name into the shadows, right beneath Mason's. She whispered, "Dad." Daniel stood. The hostel room watched him step forward, reaching out to protect his vulnerable daughter. Sophie stood trembling, forced to face this crowd because her father asked. They walked down the long aisle toward the stage as the hostile audience watched, hungry for the public humiliation of an innocent child. At the steps, an authority figure in a school blazer reached for Sophie's hands. "Just the marker, sweetheart," he said with a fake, practiced smile. Then he saw the small silver medal pinned inside her project case. The prize the honest judges had awarded her after the exhibition. His face hardened. "And the preliminary medal as well," he demanded. "We need that returned before the official presentation can begin." The words sounded polite, but the act was pure cruelty. Sophie stared at her hard-earned medal, as if she could not believe this was happening. She had hidden it inside to keep her proudest achievement safe. She had dreamed of walking up here tonight, hearing her name, and smiling that shy smile of a child who worked hard and won. Instead, a powerful adult was forcing her to hand it over like a shameful mistake. Around them, people leaned in to watch. Headmaster Brahm stood at the microphone, wearing the smug mask of a man, pretending this injustice was unfortunate but absolutely necessary. Helena Wexler watched from the front table, unblinking and heartless. Victor Lang sat back with folded hands, acting like a judge over a rigged trial. Little Sophie's fingers shook as she touched her medal. "Do I have to?" she whispered, while the staff member looked to Brahm. Brahm gave a cold nod. Sophie turned away, refusing to let them see her cry. That dignity made it hurt worse. Her young eyes simply could not comprehend this cruelty. At that exact moment, these adults crossed a line they can never uncross. Daniel marched up the steps, standing tall right beside his daughter. The nervous announcer shifted on the stage. "Sir, please return to your table so we can finish the presentation." Daniel ignored the man, keeping his gaze locked on Brahm. Then, in a deadly calm voice that cut deeper than any shout, he demanded, "How much does it cost to buy this school?" For one quiet second, nobody in the room moved. Then the mocking laughter started, beginning right at the front tables. A sharp, amused chuckle erupted from a wealthy board member. Another sneer followed from a donor's husband. Soon, a wave of cruel mockery rolled through the entire hall. Some fake polite elites covered their mouths. Most did not even bother. Someone in the middle actually clapped, treating a father's pain like the evening's best joke. Helena Wexler smiled with smug, open disbelief. "Oh, how embarrassing," Victor Lang sneered, chuckling into his expensive glass. "Someone throw him out." Even the cowardly Brahm looked relieved now. This fit the narrative these corrupt elites had written for Daniel Rowland. Just a proud, working-class father losing control in their exclusive, snobbish world. Yet Sophie stood frozen, a helpless child still holding the edge of her stolen medal. Daniel drew his phone with the quiet, cold resolve of true justice. He unlocked his screen, opening the message thread to end this. He typed two simple, devastating words: "Proceed now." Full authorization, main hall, no more delays. He sent it, pocketed the phone, and stood as Sophie's shield. As their cruel laughter died, he challenged them, "Go ahead, headmaster. Finish your work." The corrupt headmaster's brow furrowed in confusion. "Mr. Rowland, this is not the place for theatrics." Daniel's expression remained utterly stone-cold. "No, it is the place for truth. Let's see how far you'll go before justice walks through those doors." A wave of sudden fear rippled through their guilty, silent crowd. Victor Lang panicked, gesturing for security. Two guards marched forward to silence the child's protectors, but the main hall doors suddenly flew open. Both doors wide open. A freezing wind swept in, forcing every guilty head to turn. 3 black sedans idled outside, their open doors signaling an imminent reckoning. Professionals dressed in dark, tailored coats stepped inside. They marched in with the absolute authority of people who never needed to ask for permission. Leading the charge were 2 lawyers clutching legal portfolios. Behind them walked a powerful woman Daniel recognized instantly. Margaret Voss, chief legal trustee of the massive Calder Foundation. Beside her strode a tall man, wearing wire glasses representing Harrow Bank's private fiduciary division. Then came 2 forensic auditors and a compliance officer, accompanied by 2 financial investigators with badges glinting on their belts. No one was laughing at the child now. The lead attorney stepped up, opened his folder, and locked eyes with Brahm. "Master Brahm, I am Elias Mercer." His voice shattered the heavy silence. "Senior counsel for the Calder Educational Trust and authorized representative of the primary donor behind the Rowan Clare Foundation, the endowment supporting Silverthorne Academy itself." The corrupt adults couldn't process the sudden shift in power. Mercer turned, pointing to Daniel. "This is Mr. Daniel Rowan." Shock rippled through the hall as Mercer delivered his next devastating words. "Mr. Rowan is the sole controller of the anonymous funds that built Clare Science Hall. The Clare Reading Atrium, the student grant program, the lower campus laboratory renovations, the prestigious Founders Young Innovator Medal, and every single scholarship managed by the Larkstone Trust. The room fell dead silent. Up front, Helena Wexler's face drained of color as her cruel schemes fell apart. Victor Lang panicked, standing up to shout, "That is absurd." Mercer ignored him completely, stating calmly, "It is fully documented." Margaret Voss stepped up, slamming down the ultimate proof of their corruption. "Tonight," she announced, Mr. Rowan attended in person to see if Silverthorne Academy still honored the noble purpose for which his late wife's philanthropic endowments were created. Bram gaped like a caught fish, speechless. Mercer kept going. "He did not come here begging this school to favor his daughter. He came to see if this institution still deserves his wife's name." Those quiet words hit the crowded hall harder than any shout. On the massive screens, Mason Wexler's smiling photo still loomed. Nobody dared to clap, nobody dared to make a move. Down by the stage, little Sophie stared at her dad in shock. She always knew he was strong, capable, quiet. Smarter than any adult she knew, but this was a raw power he had shielded from her childhood. Daniel looked down at his daughter and gave a tiny reassuring nod. "Stay with me." Victor Lang finally found his voice. "This is highly irregular," he blustered, standing tall. "Donor administration issues should be handled behind closed doors, through proper channels. There is no need to disrupt a children's event with what?" Daniel demanded, taking a step forward. He claimed the microphone with the quiet confidence of a man grabbing a trusted tool. "The consequences," Lang snarled. "You cannot hijack our leadership. Just because your daughter lost the competition." Whispers broke out as parents looked uneasily at each other. They wanted a script, and Lang was desperate to hand them one. Daniel held up the flash drive Nora had secretly passed him. "My daughter earned that victory," he said, "and you stole it." He slipped the drive to an auditor, who quickly beamed the files to the technician's control booth. Mercer whispered a final warning. Instantly, Mason's photo vanished from the big screens, replaced by scanned grading sheets, raw scores, and signatures. The first slide exposed the original scores from the science judges. Sophie Rowan 98, Mason Wexler 84. Another page flashed up. Yellow highlights marked the teacher comments. Most technically functional design. The lowest cost emergency aid model. Exceptional, brilliant, independent reasoning for her age. Then came the forged scorecard, time-stamped late that night. Sophie's presentation score had been docked by 12 points. A coward's note had been added in slippery corporate language that practically reeked of guilt. Concerns regarding school brand alignment and donor suitability. Outraged whispers filled the room. Nora Ellis stood near the wall, pale but unyielding. Daniel confronted Bram. "Care to explain what donor suitability means when you're talking about a 7-year-old child?" Bram stammered, "Mr. Rowan, the Academy weighs many factors when choosing our student ambassadors." "Ambassadors," Daniel shot back. "This is a science competition. It involves public roles. Character matters too." Bram swallowed hard. "You do not understand the pressure of keeping this school afloat." Daniel let out a sharp, joyless laugh. There was zero humor in it. "No," he said. "I understand completely, and that is the problem." He turned back to face the crowd. "My daughter built a working generator from scraps, a small kit, and 6 weeks of labor at our kitchen table. She built it because she knows how terrifying darkness is for kids. But you threw her aside for a polished fake. A failed project you accepted just because his wealthy mother promised you cash." Helena Wexler stood so fast her chair screeched on the floor. "That is a lie." Mercer raised another paper, exposing emails from her. "We are looking at direct correspondence between Helena and the headmaster, discussing $1 million bribe with very corrupt strings attached, buying a top spot for her child at tonight's event." Helena stared, claiming those private messages were strictly confidential. But corruption always demands secrecy. As Daniel spoke, a dark murmur rippled through the crowd. No one laughed. Shocked parents scrambled for their phones. Disgusted eyes locked onto Helena, then Bram, and finally Victor Lang. Lang slammed his fist down, claiming it was just a simple misunderstanding. He claimed their board would review the matter privately. "Not this time," Daniel replied, giving a firm nod to Margaret Voss. She opened the next file. She announced a confidential audit in a voice as sharp as glass. It revealed massive fraud in the scholarship funds controlled by their administration. Money meant for underprivileged science students was funneled away into fake administrative consulting fees. They wasted it on lavish galas and buying influence. The screen flashed once more, outlining endless rows of stolen grant money and red flag transfers for all to see. Victor Lang went pale, his smug confidence evaporated in an instant. "These files are totally incomplete," he barked. "You cannot expose private financial data in front of families and kids." "You are wrong," the banker interjected, his voice utterly cold and decisive. "The donor has absolute authority to investigate how you stole his endowment." Another file appeared. "Let us examine the rosters showing the original, deserving faculty recommendations. Hardworking, talented kids who deserved the help, contrasted against the wealthy names who received it. They had crossed out deserving kids to favor wealthy donors. Spoiled children of trustees who did not need a single dime." A shocked gasp echoed through the crowd. A mother stood up crying, yelling that her son was rejected twice. Another cried that her daughter was too. Suddenly you and I can see the entire room erupt in fury. Brahm tried to silence the truth, but Daniel kept the microphone just out of reach. "I didn't come here to buy respect," he said. "I came to see who had been selling it." Those words hung in the air like a heavy verdict as he locked eyes with Helena Wexler. "My daughter didn't need my money to be valuable. You needed my money to pretend you were better than her." Helena's face froze in complete public humiliation. "This is obscene. Mason is a child." "Yes," Daniel said. "Which is why you should have let him lose, honestly." Mason shrank into his chair, looking small for once, staring at his mother in frightened confusion. For a brief moment Daniel felt a flicker of pity. But then he saw Sophie holding her stolen medal, and the pity instantly vanished. Victor Lang made one final desperate attempt. "You can't make unilateral decisions over school governance." Mercer answered before Daniel had to. "Under Clause 17 of the Endowment Control Instrument, activated tonight by Principal Review, Mr. Rowan can suspend discretionary releases, freeze programs, and force an external audit, and remove all trust-linked administrative officers pending investigation." Lang looked as if the earth had just swallowed him whole. Margaret Voss immediately turned toward her compliance officers. "As of this moment, all Larkstone scholarship accounts are frozen, Mr. Lang's access credentials are revoked." An investigator stepped directly toward Victor Lang. "Sir, we'll need your phone and badge." Lang froze. The investigator sharply repeated now, across the entire hall. "You and I are watching this corrupt hypocrite slowly remove his official badge with trembling fingers." Headmaster Brahm was now sweating on stage. "This can still be managed," he pleaded. "Mr. Rowan, if there was a misunderstanding—" "It was no misunderstanding," Daniel said. "It was a choice." Brahm tried again. "Think of the school's reputation." Daniel's voice remained cold and level. "I am." He turned to face the crowd. "Effective immediately," he announced. "Headmaster Theodore Brahm is suspended pending an independent review. Victor Lang is stripped of all foundation-linked authority. The scholarship list for this year will be completely re-examined by an independent external panel. Every competition result tainted by corrupt donor pressure will be audited. Every child robbed of recognition just because they lacked the right surname will get justice." A heavy silence gripped the room. It's the stunned silence we feel when we watch corrupt power finally being stripped away, right in front of them, leaving no room to pretend they didn't see it happen. Daniel finally lowered the mic, turning his attention to the true victim, young Sophie. Her cheeks were stained with tears. She didn't even realize she was crying. She looked completely overwhelmed and so incredibly small beneath the grand gold ceilings. Daniel knelt down right in front of her. "You did nothing wrong," he promised. She stared up at him. "Are you really in charge?" "Not of everything," she whispered, a small nervous laugh escaping her. "Enough of this," he said. "Tell me what you want now." She glanced at the crowd, the screens and the revoked medal still clutched in her tiny fingers. "I just want them to see that it works," she whispered. Daniel nodded once, then "Go show them." He stood tall and raised the microphone once more. "My daughter will now present the project she actually built herself," he said. Anyone who came here to support true education is welcome to listen. And anyone who came here to buy outcomes can leave. Nobody moved. Daniel quietly lowered the microphone stand for her. Let's watch as the technician, suddenly eager to help, switches the screens to show Sophie's display table. Nora Ellis rushed forward from the side with red eyes and careful, gentle hands. She helped carry the small beacon to center stage. She stayed silent, but as Sophie looked up, Nora gave her a reassuring nod that said, "Go on." Sophie swallowed hard, dwarfed by the massive, silent auditorium around her. "They will not listen to me," she whispered to her father. He bent down, keeping his voice so low only she could hear. "Then make them," he said, stepping back. You can feel her courage build as she stands before a room of powerful adults looming in the dark. Then she took a deep breath and touched the small folded panel on her device. "My project is called the Little Beacon," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "It is designed for when the power grid fails." The screen behind her zoomed in on her small hands opening the solar film wings. In bad storms or snow, when the system breaks, lights stop working. Phones can die. And children get terrified when it is dark. She paused. "I know I do." Nobody in the audience made a sound. "So, I wanted to build something cheap enough that regular families could afford one. Or hospitals or schools or buses. It runs on sunlight when there is some. And if there is not, you just turn this hand crank." She demonstrated, slowly turning the crank handle. A soft white light glowed, causing a murmur to ripple through the tables of biased judges. Sophie continued, her voice growing stronger. "The battery compartment is sealed because little kids touch everything. And the inside can use a saltwater backup if the main cell runs too low. It does not power a house, it is not meant to. It powers what matters first." She held up the simple output cable. A single light, a phone or a monitor. Maybe even a baby's warming pad if you adjust the voltage correctly. In the third row, we see an engineering judge lean forward, his skepticism shattered. Sophie pointed to the screen behind her, where her hand-drawn diagrams were displayed. "My mother used to care for sick children at night," she said softly. "And my dad says when systems fail, simple things save lives because anyone can actually use them." Sophie kept her defense simple, looking out over the silent crowd. "I do not want any child in a hospital or at school or home terrified because the power went out and no adult cared enough to plan." There it was, no fake, rehearsed adult polish. No safe, donor-approved charm. Just a child explaining why she built something real, silencing her powerful abusers. The room stayed frozen, then one brave soul clapped Nora. Soon a righteous science judge stood up to applaud her justice. Then another, a retired teacher, rose from the back row. She stood, clapping hard until her hands turned red. A father nearby joined the applause, followed by a wave of students. More parents joined until the entire hall rose for her. Today we see real justice, not a performance, yet her abusers stayed silent. Helena Wexler stood frozen, clutching her chair, her face carved with the humiliation of defeat. Headmaster Bram sank into his chair, a coward shrinking from his own tarnished name. Investigators quietly escorted the corrupt Victor Lang out through the side doors. But the victorious roar filling the room belonged entirely to Sophie. She looked startled by the support, almost disbelieving. Then she slowly smiled through the tears she had fought so hard to hide. Daniel did not clap first, waiting until she felt the room finally recognizing her. Then he applauded too. Later, the authorities began taking formal statements. After the disgraced Bram was led to a private office with counsel. After complicit parents began whispering, desperately trying to protect their own reputations. After Margaret Voss launched an emergency board meeting to strip the abusers of power. The grand hall finally started to empty. Sophie sat on the stage swinging her legs while Daniel carefully packed her beacon back into its case. Her stolen silver medal lay on top now, proud and unhidden. Nora Ellis walked over slowly, still holding a folder to her chest. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said. "And thank you." Daniel looked up. "For what?" "For not letting them bury the truth." Her eyes found Sophie. "And for making sure she got her justice." Sophie smiled shyly. "Thank you for the flash drive." Nora laughed softly under her breath. "Best thing I copied all year." Margaret Voss marched across the hall, heels sharp on the marble. "Daniel." She spoke in a quiet voice. The emergency board vote is unanimous. A new administration will be installed by morning. An outside investigation begins at first light. We need your signature on the suspension orders, he nodded. Send them to the house. She glanced at Sophie, her face softening. Your wife would have been proud tonight. For the first time all night, something inside Daniel shifted. Yeah, he said softly. She really would have. As they finally stepped outside, the cold air felt clean. The elite school driveway had completely lost its fake sparkle. To you and me, this place looks ordinary now. The elite symbols faded, cars, stone, and lights lost their power. An honest truck waited in the shadows, far better than their corrupt luxury. Sophie climbed inside, holding the medal they tried to steal. It hung around her neck, her project resting in her lap. She was quiet until he started the engine, then she turned and asked, Dad? Yeah, Bug, were you always rich? He smiled slightly, keeping his eyes on the road. No, he replied, turning to look at her. But being your father was what actually mattered more. She processed that deeply, the way she analyzed everything. Did Mom know she knew enough? Sophie nodded, resting her tired head. After a moment, she whispered, Will they fix the school? Daniel put the truck in gear. They will have to. As they rolled down the driveway, he looked back once at Silverthorne Academy, glowing corruptly in the dark night. By morning, the lawyers and explosive headlines would strike. Panicked calls and desperate excuses. And the fake moral outrage of cowards who only spoke up when it got expensive. There would be audits, firings, refunds, and new panels. Strict new rules, but we must focus on the children. Innocent kids whose names never bought them favors. Kids whose honest science projects were made by hand. Deserving students who needed help with books and simple bus fare. Not fancy galas, real children like the brave girl beside him. Still so small that the heavy metal looked huge on her. Tonight did not make Silverthorne worthy. It simply destroyed the illusion of their superiority. Daniel drove past the gate, where the guards stood terrified, not daring to stop them, and out onto the dark highway home. Beside him, Sophie gently touched her reclaimed medal, then her project case, and finally her father's sleeve. They actually listened, she whispered softly to herself. Daniel squeezed her hand, offering comfort on the seat between them. Yeah, he said, they did. After tonight, this school will no longer belong to bullies who buy their dignity. It belongs once more to the children who earn their future, who deserve justice, and are brave enough to speak up. Justice spoke.